Welcome to today's webinar, Retail 2025, Unlocking Your Competitive Advantage. As we look towards 2025, retail is undergoing transformative shifts, opportunities and challenges that demand a fresh approach to your strategies. From innovative store layouts and game-changing pricing tactics and technologies to power of real-time, on-the-ground insights, both retailers and brands must adapt quickly to stay competitive. To provide you with the tools and strategies you need to thrive in the evolving retail landscape, I've invited Jacob Blondin to join me. Jake joined RDSolutions, formerly Retail Data, in 2015, initially leading the company's strategic initiatives as vice president. He was promoted to chief operating officer in 2019 and became CEO and president in 2020. With a career focused on optimization and innovation, Jake brings deep experience from technology-driven industries. Jake has played a key role in expanding RDSolutions field operations across both the U.S. and Canada, leading the company's transformation into a technology-driven leader in retail competitive intelligence. Under his leadership, RDSolutions has enhanced its ability to deliver actionable insights on pricing, promotions, and assortment differences between in-store and online channels. Today's webinar is sponsored by RDSolutions, who equips retailers and brands with actionable insights to optimize every customer touchpoint, both online and in-store. Through advanced global web scraping and unmatched national field coverage, RDSolutions help businesses enhance customer experiences, boost loyalty, and drive measurable growth in near real time. With RDSolutions, you get much more than just data. You get intelligence to make faster, smarter decisions that directly impact your bottom line. Let's get started. So, Jake, I've heard you say that mediocre has become the new norm at retail. Explain.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've recently been on the market and we've just seen doing a good job is kind of not the norm. I think we've spent a lot of energy over the last 2 years building up our services, leveraging our experience, and really going to a point where we really just focus on doing a good job. Pace of resolution, responsiveness, these cores that I think have been fundamental to industry, I thought, for years. It seems like there's a trend, certainly since the 20s, where people are just accepting of a moderate quality level, and we're just out there doing as best we can to do a good job.
Is that because of the pandemic? Is it because people are just don't have their heart and soul into what they're doing anymore? What caused this?
I think it's simply a little bit of all of it, actually. I think we've generally gone to a mediocre level of service everywhere that we go. You go to a restaurant, there's a frustration with the quality of service that we're getting. Almost anywhere we go, we've just accepted that we're going to do it ourselves. It's going to be a little bit lesser quality than it used to be, but I don't know that that's the service that people really want. It's just the service that's progressed into the world that we have. And I think there's a progressive shift back everywhere that we trend in a day to really care about the quality of service. Our whole discussion that we have often over the years that we've been in services where we're not the right service for everybody. We do care about quality and more so just the relationship that we try to build. We're a good partner for that.
Is it also partly because of people not getting as much money at pay that they expect to get?
Well, I think we've seen, at least in our business, which is pretty heavy labor intensity, that people have a high expectation of their comp. I think we're seeing actually quite a bit of compression in that gap. I think the affordability that people have is a problem. So maybe it's that there is this tension in the system between the ability to pay and what industry expects for the price, right? So, there was the inflationary aspects of price that people, I think, thought people saw, which a lot of the brands have got blamed for over the last couple of years. How real is it? I can't really specify, but I certainly see that people have got a compression in what they can afford. And now, price as a general theme is everywhere, in every day. And in people that you wouldn't normally think. I mean, I'm very conscious of price. We all are. And I think that's a function of the available disposable income that we all have.
So both on the retail level and the CPG level, there's a lot of talk about the collection of data. Are they doing enough with the data that they're collecting? I mean, I remember when frequent shopper cards first came out and retailers, jumped on it. And I was with one retailer who will remain nameless, national retailer. And we were talking about frequent shopper card data. And he says, he's got boxes and boxes and boxes of data sitting in a storeroom. Nobody's looking at it. Has it gotten any better?
I would know. I think we've done a lot better at building solutions on how to consume data, but we just have exceedingly more, right? I mean, the argument is data is kind of the new oil of the future. And I think AI is creates this entirely new means of consumption. But I think retailers and brands and collectively the world is struggling with, okay, now we've got an exceedingly large amount of data. How do you bring it all together? How do you make use of it? Because data alone is kind of meaningless. If you leave it in a box, I can tell you nothing happens with it. And then you move it up the stream until you get to insight. But then if you don't act on it, it's just stressing. So we as a society are struggling with the availability of data and how to use it well. And that's a lot of what we're about, right? From a solutioning standpoint, we've got the ability to collect the data, whether it's online in store and all kinds of different types of information and data that we can gather. But we've spent a lot of energy figuring out how do you effectively build a solution or a partner relationship with brands and retailers where you can use the data, which is why we built a pretty strong platform environment where we process, let's say, billions of data points a week, and then just highlight the couple things that you need to worry about as a given individual. Like if you think about a category manager inside of a retailer, they only care about a small subsection. You think about a pricing manager, you think about a buyer or a category manager in a brand. Their slice is small, but how do you sift through all the information that's available to worry about when do I need to take action? And that's a lot of our effort, is how to drive clarity of when you need to take action based on an appropriate strategy or position that you want to have in the market. How do we help you identify that opportunity and then pursue that opportunity? And that's why we have this whole field observation team and resolution team that can go out and, for instance, you have 0 sales stores. Everybody worries about it. Everybody talks about it. But by the time you figure it out and get someone to solve the problem, it could be a week, 6 weeks. Maybe it's solved. Maybe it isn't. How do we close that cycle and go from observational opportunity to resolution, capturing sales and benefit of clients? Because I kind of I was thinking about it yesterday. So you have a deficiency like that has two. One is sales. Everybody can say revenue. But the other part that I think is interesting, more qualitative, is the impact on brand. So a particular presence on a shelf that is not looking its best. That has a brand impact. Granted, you may not get sales because you don't have the volume on the shelf, but you also are impacting your brand perception as that person walks by. So lots of problems to consider.
Hi, my name is Valerie. I'm from the Las Vegas market. I've been with RDSolutions for about 4 years now. And my favorite part is the diversity of all the different jobs I get to do. Recently, I was assigned to an InfoQuest job for RDSolutions. I was assigned to a couple of stores, and the client asked me to go into the store and check their merchandise display. I filled the display and organized it, took a couple pictures with the app, and then I was done.
So let's say I'm the category manager for a hot sauce brand.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What can you do for me?
Full spectrum, right? So we can evaluate, for instance, your e-com presence and what is your searchability and what's your discoverability of your item, right? So a big issue that I'm currently seeing, and I actually was looking again in the last week as we continue to build our product portfolio, is I would actually look for a very basic question like chips, or a very basic question like hot sauce. You go to an e-com site of one of the retailers and you put in hot sauce. The probability that you turn up on the first fold, if you haven't already purchased position and optimized your presence, is very low. How many people go to the button that say load more? I don't. I don't think most all of us do, right? You've got about 20 options and then it says load more. You're like, I don't need more. I kind of not that passionate unless I know exactly what I want. So where is that discovering process happening, or that accidental switching, right? Which is an active strategy in a store, right? That's the main opportunity for switching, is in a store on a physical shelf. How do you do that on a digital shelf? So how do we help people better do that? That's one environment for that type of customer. Like on the physical store, it's again, more basic fundamentals of of merchandising performance. But there's this whole relationship. So in store, maybe you don't have enough reviews. So I know the main dimension people worry about is the product available? How well is it priced? And then how well is it reviewed? Those are the three main dimensions that drive our behavior to purchase, the path to purchase, like the decision to purchase. That is a big impact. So we can actually partner with companies to help them improve their reviews and their store performance by actually working with our team to have them go out the product, merchandise the product, and in parallel purchase the product and provide an unbiased review of it. We can't influence that review outcome, but I mean, you can't do that with a normal consumer anyway, but we can help facilitate the presence. And if your product's great, people are going to love it, which is, I assuming, why we're out there reviewing it.
So for RDSolutions, how many stores, how many field people are there? If I'm this hot sauce manager, I want to make sure that, you're actually going into the store and being able to look at the display, give me the feedback on it. But are we talking 100 stores? Are we talking 500 stores?
Whatever your distribution is, right? I mean, a lot of startup brands that we work with are maybe in a Whole Foods or in that more developing space. We'll do work in all of those stores. I mean, we have thousands of employees, and a big differentiator is we have all employees, right? So the big challenge that I see when I've looked at this market as we've been this since the 80s, collecting data in the retail industry, particularly grocery. And the main issue that I see is that people are struggling to get the data collected in a way that they. So I think the trainability of our team, the assignability of a team, it sounds like a simple dimension, but if you're working with let's say a partial workforce or a contract workforce, you can't assign them. It's not legal to assign them because they're contractors, so therefore they're autonomously capable to work. But the biggest challenge is you need the work done. Like, you didn't ask for the work to be done to get 75%, 80% of it done. So that's a big part of our team is the assignability. We have a whole management team that sits on top of our field staff. Then we have regional district managers, regional managers, and then our corporate infrastructure here, all of which is made to make sure that work gets done on time and at a quality that you expect. You go to the recruiting process, which I've come to realize is unique. I kind of took it for granted. We've spent a long time building our recruiting process because we're really worried about our brand. So we do all of our recruiting in-house because you can't really farm out your brand, your culture, your image. So because of that, we have a maybe unreasonably rigorous process on the front, maybe appropriately rigorous. But for us, it allows us to select people that we're comfortable can do the job, are excited about doing the job, and are reliable and dependable, like requiring them to have a driver's license, requiring them to have insurance. You should have those things of your employees, but if they're not an employee, what do you care, right? Otherwise, it's an employee ID and a user number, right? I mean, that's how that system works. So the difference is we make a person show up to an interview. We make them show up to a secondary training. There's process, and that's burdensome, but that burden, you could argue, is a really strong filter by the quality person that we have in our team. And that's really why we've been growing fairly strong over the last year and a half as we expanded our services, is just doing a good job. I mean, our recurring use by our clients is 90% of clients have used us recurringly after the first time they used us. That's not normal rate. That's why I come to these simple principles. Like, why is this happening? Because we just care about doing a great job. It's all we know to do. Coming out of retail pricing, retailers as our core partner, the accuracy and timeliness of price is critical for your position in the marketplace. So that's fundamentally how we respond. We don't know how to do a mediocre job. Now, that can be a problem because there's definitely sometimes we're doing a mediocre job might be okay. That we're probably not made for that because I don't know how to tell my team to do like most of it and do a pretty good job. They don't know how to do that. So it's been an interesting learning of like, yeah, if someone's down doing kind of don't really mind when it gets done, not super critical that it gets done exactly how I want, but most of it done pretty good, there is a reason for that. There's a place for that. That's just not our game. So we've been thoughtful about how do we build the right partners and relationships with members across the organizations in both retail and brand, where that service is important or that quality, those dimensions of our culture.
Hi, my name's Ezel. I'm based out of Las Vegas. I've been with the company for 3 years. What I enjoy most about this job is the diversity. You don't feel like you're in the same place all the time, and the great thing about it's not monotonous. On a recent InfoQuest job, the client asked that I visit a few grocery stores that their products were sold in and compare the merchandising to the planogram. I cleaned up the display and I took some photos. It was a very easy job, and I was very excited about doing this for the client.
Let's talk for a minute about branding. In 2025, how important is a brand for retailers and for CPG? And what role do programs like Walmart Cash fit into the whole branding aspect?
I mean, I would argue brand has no barrier. You and I are a brand of ourselves, right? So I think the very simple frame I come around brand is it's the opinion that precedes you. Right or wrong, you don't really get to pick your brand. It's kind of a perception. So you spend a lot of energy creating the right perception of consumers or partners like you and I to build a perception of who we are, but that's our brand. It's the opinion that it precedes you. So I think it's incredibly important to every single brand. And I think anyone in the industries you just suggested, retail, you say like the core of retail is it's a very large real estate company and a marketing company. Their marketing is their brand, right? Their brand image, the confidence they build in the consumer to show up to their address and get a service that they expect for a price point that they agree with. That's a retailer's brand. A CPG is kind of a similar at a different space. So they're expecting anywhere you go buy this product, you're going to get this quality of product and it's going to be a well-priced product, right? Because technically the cost of goods should be functionally the same retail price, right? So that's the principle. So I think brand is super critical. I think you mentioned Walmart Cash as a dimension of brand / like loyalty, I think is a different way to think about cash. Taking it a little bit differently, the point around Walmart Cash is what is the price point that you're in fact competing with if you're retailer to retailer, brand to brand. Two products trying to get into a basket is a brand issue. Two retailers trying to get you to show up and shop with me frequently is kind of the same problem, a different angle, which is all usually price. Convenience and then price, right, are probably the most core drivers. Availability, of course, precedes all of those. If you don't have it, you can't sell it. But, when we look at that, the complexity of price is the business we've been in for many, many, many years. It actually was very easy before and very, very hard now. You've got, if you think about brand management, you've got third-party retailing environments, right? You've got e-com environment, which is, let's say, first-party e-com on a retailer site, Walmart.com, because you mentioned Cash. Kroger.com, ShopRite. So all of these retailers have their first party site. That's their goal, is to create that relationship with the consumer there. It makes total sense. But then you've got Instacart, you get more international, you have high presence of Uber Eats and Dash and these other formats that are experiences that people have with your brand directly and indirectly. I think you need to be thoughtful about all of those positions that you're taking and how you're performing in that ecosystem and across the ecosystem. I was recently talking to a large retailer last week about actually helping with this issue is that, okay, you have your first party environment, you have your in-store environment, you have your third party e-com relationships, and you've got 2 or 3 different channels you're selling to. If you have a marketplace, you have this whole other dynamic of perception because you've got third party sellers in there selling products, sometimes at crazy pricing. You're trying to govern that. There's a whole effort being taken now within retail about how do I manage marketplace and make sure that it doesn't become detrimental to the perception that I'm building with my customers about my environment, right? You see a lot of disclosure, but it's kind of at a disclosure level. Eventually, they're trying to control that. But anyway, I think this is a central theme that people are worried about is how do I control my brand across all the many channels that I'm available in with a consistency, and that's hard because an Instacart environment is kind of its own ecosystem. It has its own presence. It has its own pricing mechanics. It kind of has its own customer, which are quite sticky. Retailers would love to pull them to first party. It's this interesting dynamic that you have in the market where there's a lot of necessary evil isn't fair because it's a high value there's a value in the marketplace for that service, but it's this, you much prefer to have your customers shop at your store. That's the optimal solution, and you'd rather them self-check because now I'm running the best retail environment possible. You've seen Amazon put a heck of a lot of energy into that, but that is, this is where we're seeing price. And so, you end up with like a reg price. You end up with a reg price online. Let's just assume all channels and just leave them alone. But you've got reg, you've got promo, you've got potentially secondary couponing discount mechanism that's sitting there, particularly in an e-com environment. And then you potentially got the last piece, which is Walmart Cash, as an example, which is in the cart, a loyalty program, somewhat replacing Savings Catcher back in the day. That is a mechanism that's supported, I think, between brand and retail, from what I understand. And that's a final price. So when you think about competitively as a retailer, what is my competitive price that I'm competing with? Understanding those prices, you may not build your pricing engines off that, and your defense and pricing mechanism may not include it, but you should be aware of all those price presentations. Similarly for brands.
So let's flip it around. And what's the consumer lens today on price? We hear a lot of people concerned prices are going up, I can't afford things, and so on. But looking through the consumer lens, how do they really feel about price?
I think those problems aren't wrong, right? The price is going up, right? I mean, you've had I think the progression of shrinkflation has come out of or is kind of now the new norm, right? I think I bought a box of 12 count Cheez-Its for my kids and noticed that the ounce count is down, but the count is 12 still, but the ounce per bag is down. And it's funny, I found a benefit there. I was like, wow, they got the calories down from 140 to 100. So in a weird way, you've helped me. I probably just wanted to taste a few anyway. But anyway.
But before I let you do that, I remember when Kraft came up with their 100-calorie packs. I don't know if you remember that. I was talking to some people at Kraft at the time, and their number one complaint for the 100-calorie packs on their 800 number from consumers was that there wasn't enough in the bag.
I mean, it's a pretty straight formula, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that part I think that concept of shrinking the size but keeping the count, and that whole effort that's been really since 2020 and more recently as brands kind of acknowledge the concern over price and really their cost basis, and then how do you kind of guard margin and so on. I think price is real. You look at, we spend a lot of effort in our traditional work in partnership with retail is the outside of the store, right? So the prices there have gone up. In reality, they have. Now, a lot of a business is labor, right? I mean, fruits, vegetables, meats, and so on. Granted, the raw commodity has gone up, but the commodity also has a factor of the effort to get that to that final destination, which is if it was a steak, it's getting it all the way to be a steak on the shelf. I don't think you're going to reverse it, right? The inflation of the expense of an individual to do the tasks, feed the animals, and so on, that's forever. So I think people are pressed on price, and I think price is coming in direct focus for everybody on how to maintain their customers and how to create loyalty, and that's where these programs are coming. This fragmentation of price. I'd rather actually have it within an ecosystem. I mean, it's a good example of Amazon, right? They've done a good job of creating the price so long as you're loyal. I think you're seeing a lot of that. I think Cash is a good one. Plus is a good one. You're seeing everybody kind of come out with their own version of these programs to try to give you price, but also get something as a transactional value between the parties. Let me learn more about you as a consumer so I can better curate my assortment. So maybe I can drive out operational costs because I better understand my consumer. And maybe I can serve up custom ads, which is, of course, the end state of everybody. But that's harder than you think. And there's a lot of people trying to solve that problem. But it kind of makes sense. At the same time, I don't know how perfect we're going to solve that problem with.
So you mentioned meat. How should retailers manage the center store versus the perimeter of the store? And what about, all these locked cases that we're seeing, especially in drugstores, but also a lot of supermarkets also, where you've got to press the button and, wait for somebody to come. Is that a short-term shrink strategy? Is that going to go away? But I mean, look at the whole store for me.
Well, we'll start with the quick one on locked cases, because it is like a central theme that comes out in every single publication, seemingly daily now. I first saw it, I don't know, I was traveling somewhere. I took pictures and said to my team, I said, this is crazy. Shrink has to be really, really valuable to justify locking up a 5-gallon jug of detergent to think it could walk away. Clearly, there must be precedent, right? I got to assume that people are not doing this silly. I would think in makeup and so on, and those type of specialty, high value, small frames, that may make sense. But I think the extreme is extreme. We've done some studies around that. And how long are you going to wait for a deodorant in an aisle? I'm going to say near zero, because you'll just go online and order from Amazon. It'll be at your house. So I think retailers, particularly brick and mortar retailers, really have to be thoughtful about how they're defecting customer pattern and creating trialing with other channels that could be a conflict with you long term. I'm super passionate about the in-store retailer because I still shop in store almost exclusively. I like the experience, but I think it's a huge risk for those small little things. Waiting 7 minutes, 8 minutes is generally, we've done some studies with our team. So how long is this really taking, folks? That's not enough. That's too much time for a $6 2-pack of deodorant. So anyway, that's how I hope they solve it. I saw some recent stuff come from CVS, I think, and Walgreens, both trying to figure out how do they solve it with an app. A new burden for a problem that was created by ourselves. I mean, it just seems like an interesting challenge that they're putting more friction in the system, which the whole goal was to remove friction. So yeah, I think it's a real problem that needs to be solved. And we've done some studies ourselves in partnership with brands as well to understand, like, how do you resolve it? We've done some work where people have asked us to evaluate whether or not there was a person monitoring the rows that your product was in. Let's say you're a large brand and you have a high presence in a particular category. Sometimes there's relationships with the retailer that's supposed to be manned or personnel there. Is there? It's very hard to do at a large scale. So we've done some work there just trying to get clarity of how do you address this problem. Retail more broadly around, we kind of break the store very simply, and retailers kind of own the outside of the store and brands really own the center store, right? You don't see, other than private label, which is a interesting growth that's happened over the years, but you really see retailers spending a heck of a lot of energy, and you've got some really strong companies like most all of them now have really nice hot bars. I think Publix does a pretty good job with that. H-E-B was kind of a early stage adopter early on that we saw doing a lot more work there. And they've done a lot of progressive thinking about how do you position those products and how do you create that experience. But we've seen, obviously, you see more and more space allocated to that fresh type of both prepared foods as the world gets to convenience. Is our life cycle. We're busier at work than I think we were. There's way more dual income households as a result of the necessity of cash in a household to live and raise children. So I think that convenience has driven a whole new layout to the store. Retailers are spending a lot more energy. We spend a lot more energy there for retailers to understand how to competitively manage their assortment as well as how to properly price those assortments. Because the visibility is tough, right? Somewhat of the convenience of a center store is with all the brands and the clarity of UPC, there's a fairly common direct match. Not always. You may be some differences in sizes and so on that we need to create some linking engines, which we use to build comparable matches. But by all accounts, the center store is reasonably mappable to one another to understand price positioning. The difficulty is the outside of the store, and we've built quite a lot of capability there. We do tons of work in the meat. We've built I think that's the most important part, right? Is meat and produce. As far as loyalty from first in the pricing and quality are the two main drivers. It's the primary basket driver as well in total price of basket as far as share of basket. So those are the central, other than the low frequency, but at a high frequency, those are the drivers and the most challenging to maintain visibility to. So I think that's the main place that we've seen quite a bit of focus in retail is particularly meat coming back into produce. If you can drive a strong price image or price position there with a high quality, because certainly people worry about quality. The biggest issue I think we've seen, at least conveyed related to e-com, is people like to pick those foods out. I think that the most probable driver of a visit is meat, seafood, fresh, and then your produce. That's driving people like me to the store, and then I'll buy the rest because I'm there. So that's kind of how we see it.
So what you're saying is very interesting to me on two levels. Number one, that the retailer, is in control and owns the perimeter, and really needs to focus on that because that's what differentiates them from another retailer. So if I look at center store, do you think that one idea or the future is going to be that we're going to go back to the way department stores used to be when we were growing up? That Revlon had the Revlon person at the Revlon counter. Are we going to see a Kellogg's counter, and it's a Kellogg's employee that's going to be manning that so that the store can really focus on the perimeter and not have to worry about those unemotional jars and boxes and cans?
Yeah, I think I think we're somewhere between those 2 points. I don't know that we'll ever get to that extreme, but I do think we're between those 2 points now. Between slotting fees and other systems that are out there, it's almost like you're consigning a section of space in that aisle or in that number of aisles. But let's say in that particular category, you've got a section, and it's in your best interest to drive the quality of that experience for the consumer. The retailer would do everything they can, but their effort is to drive down available resources. And by all accounts, the relationship has been trending over the last 15 years, where the brands are taking more accountability, acknowledging like, it's in my interest to make this experience at a high quality. So I'm going to make sure that my section, and those that have spent the most effort in that, I think are seeing performance benefits, which is a self-propagating truth, right? I mean, if you have, it looks clean, it's positioned well, it's faced well, you're taking more accountability there, and you're seeing more and more of that. So that's a lot of the work we're seeing us doing, is just directly for a brand, going and helping them make sure their section is winning as far as the presentation, the shelving positioning, if they need to drive specific promos to drive activity and visual cues to the consumer, we're helping with that stuff. So that is certainly a trend we're seeing growing. And I think it's a reasonable acknowledgement. I mean, the retailer will get to it to the extent that they can. But there's a reality of when that can be, and their motivation is to drive a proper experience for the consumer, but at a cost basis that they can make a profit. So I'm seeing way more brands step in.
So with that, obviously there's a higher cost to the brand to be able to do that, whether it's they do it or RDSolutions does it. Do you think as a result of that, we're going to see an SKU reduction so that the brand can really put more emphasis, more resources against their best-selling products versus having, 8 different size boxes of the same cereal?
It's just, you go to the rest of the world and you don't see this diversity of assortment, not at this magnitude. I think SKU rationalization is a continuous process between category managers, category captains, and brand. Obviously, what's the right answer? At the same time, as a consumer behavior, we're eager to have all these unusual flavors. I mean, I would argue we're seeing SKU growth where you see these flavors I never thought I wanted to try, but I still try it. And I'll tell you, my sons will try all of them. And I'm like, wow, that's a wild flavor. Some of them pretty good. So I think we have this continuous interest in new flavor variants. I think it's how you create energy and maintain energy around the brand. And you're also seeing tons of new disruptors come in perpetually, right? So if you're not innovating that next flavor, I would argue like the progression of like healthy dog food is the most recent pattern I've seen, that you're just seeing a lot more healthy dog food as a class of food production. You've seen definitely, and it kind of follows the trend of, over the last 30 or 40 years, this trend away from like traditional canned and a lot more focus on fresh. I think you're seeing that manifest everywhere as we start to get more research and more people have a consideration. But the cost is, they're at odds, right? I mean, that may be your bias, but how do you feed your family, I think, is the primary bias. So there's space for everybody, but there's definitely a multitude of consumer personas out there now.
So what I think I'm hearing you say is that we Americans are spoiled. That if you look at, the rest of the world versus us, we want choice. We constantly want to be entertained by our food, whether it's new flavors, new shapes, new sizes, and things like that. And yeah, we're spoiled.
I mean, unfortunately, I agree. I mean, it is interesting you go somewhere else and now everyone you ask, so we say that, but nearly everyone you ask as an individual consumer would say it's overwhelming to go to any given category, hot sauce and the flavor variants. And you're like, you spend twice as long shopping because of the diversity, but that's also maybe in the favor of everybody that we're spending more time there shopping and trying different flavor variants. So yeah, I mean, you go into something in the UK and it's a fairly simple experience. It's a fairly moderate diversity of SKUs. And you pick one of the ones, which is probably the same one that your mom and dad ate, and you just keep going, right? My wife's family's all British, so definitely got used to a fairly consistent product pattern.
So, you mentioned earlier on some examples of online. How does a retailer and a brand bridge the gap between, omni-channel, online, in-store experiences? What should they be looking at? I know, for example, when I look at a retailer's website for food products, and I look at the nutritional information and the ingredients, very often I find it to be wrong, incorrect. So I'll, go to the cupboard, look at it and say, hey, this doesn't make it. Or the picture that they've got on their website is of an old product, not the current product, and so on. So is it because of the pandemic that retailers rushed a little too much to get online and there weren't the quality control in there for, ingredients, nutritionals, photographs? And are we catching up? Are we doing a better job of it? Or is it, a slippery slope?
I think everyone's trying to do a better job. I think the first question, the growth in e-com was incredible from 2020 to 19 to 20 to 21 was 10 years of growth in 2 months. And of course, it was not a necessity in many ways, survival, that everyone said you can't go to a store or people aren't willing, both. How do we, first of all, we need groceries. So how does the consumer get fed? But then also as a business, how do we maintain our business? So I think obviously there was a huge rush to it, but it's also not easy. So I don't want to blame everybody. I mean, we manage really large databases of product information, millions and millions of records, and we have a pretty large team that's what they focus on, is maintaining the catalog quality and the attribution. And so it's a lot of work, and you're having switch out of items all the time consistently for a retailer and new products introduced. And so I think it's a hard business. So I think people are doing a reasonably good job. There's always a better job to do. I don't know that you're ever going to solve it to the nth degree. I mean, we spend a lot of time helping folks do that better, but it takes a level of rigor and consistent effort, which I think is, unfortunately, sometimes it gets addressed as a project versus a life cycle or a life commitment. So it gets done, it's really, really nice, and then over time it kind of fades away. And this is our behavior as a general society. We do that, but that's what we're seeing.
Look into your crystal ball and look towards, the rest of 2025. Still in the first quarter. What do you see as the biggest challenge in 2025 and the biggest opportunity in 2025, both for CPG and for retail?
I mean, selfishly, and in at least what we're seeing, I think the continuous theme that everyone says is AI, but it's an easy statement. It's hard to do, right? I mean, I think we're seeing, I guess it would be the opportunity and the challenge, right? I think it's I came out of semiconductors, so that was the early 2000s, 90s. that was late in that segment, but that was a life-changing influence in compute capability, right, as a society, and it drove huge shifts in how we operate. I would assume AI is that, but it's being talked about as if it's easy, and actually getting it right is hard. And I think that's what people are going to struggle with and gain benefit from. And so I think that's a huge focus that we spend time on, is how do you really leverage AI? For instance, you ask ChatGPT a question, it gives you an answer. It feels great. Ask it the question again, you'll actually get a different answer, because the neural pathways aren't definitive, they're probability based. So, but those learnings need to be learned by everybody, right? And so there is a huge opportunity with AI, but I think it will take time. I mean, if you think about all it is really a ton of computers connected together with an incredible amount of computing capacity, so it can work way faster than all of us and address way more cross correlations and relationships than we could on a single device. But with that, if it's just that, then you still need to worry about the data quality you feed it, the means that you train it on your specific decisioning and bias that you have in decisioning. And so I think it's an incredible opportunity for industry, but it isn't just a plug it in and you're all set, you're done. I think unfortunately that's what I've run across this last year, as we partner with people on some of the AI solutions that we implement, is they just expect you to plug it in and it's all done. We don't need any more people, right? And that's kind of that's the pitch on TV, right? When you talk to anybody about what is this going to do to the world? Yeah, at some point, but that point isn't 2025. I don't think it's 2028. I think it's years down the road, you'll find that you had 10 people doing this and now you have 6, which is a meaningful shift in total resource. And those other 4 people, they're going to be doing something else. This interesting paradigm that I think is this fear and this opportunity, and this is everyone's worried, well, it'll take all these jobs. But that's only under the premise that we don't have any more ideas. And I don't think we've ever been short on new things to think about and ideas to contemplate and things to build. And so I think it's going to be a net benefit. It's certainly a thoughtfulness if I think about, my sons and how they're thinking about school and where they focus on. You definitely want to be thoughtful about how you use AI and how you use broadly technology. I don't think we're going to use less data. We go all the way back to the start of our discussion. We're not going to be using less data tomorrow to make decisions. So if that's the case, then AI, in its both challenge and its benefit, will be that future state. But every kid's going to have to know Python. Every single individual is going to have to know how to interact with data and you leverage it to be meaningful insights. But then we need to make sure we drive action off that. So I think that is the growth, learning, opportunity, and challenge that we'll all be in, is acknowledging what it is, what it isn't, how to effectively leverage it. And that's a huge focus for us as an organization, given that we're a data company. And I think we're seeing more and more brands, more and more retailers eager to use it. But I think it'll be this challenging learning process between all of us of like, yes, it can be meaningful, but we need to refine the model, tune the engines, build the data pipelines that represent your bias and your thinking about how you want this thing to act. And thing is a very broad statement, but I think that's kind of both being the same is really what I think we're going to see in the marketplace is the advent of AI. I just hope the hype tempers and the recognition of the reality of how to truly implement it starts to become the norm in our society.
Jake, thanks for these great insights. We have to keep this conversation going, but in the interest of time, we promised our folks that we would limit it to 45 minutes, and we're at that point. So we have to close the discussion, but I urge all of our attendees that you want to learn more or have questions, reach out by email. That's going to be the simplest way to do it, and the email's right on our screen. Thank you for joining us.